Mark, you're muted.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this roundtable with energy and facilities managers. Our purpose this morning is to create a dialogue among the group of leaders that can serve as help for reopening buildings that may have been unoccupied or closed for several months. We have tried to gather the experience of some and resources from others for reliable, especially reliable organizations such as ASHRAE and the Centers for Disease Control. Before we dive in, let me give you a few instructions so that you can fully participate. With a number of people on this call, this web meeting, it's important that you keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. We encourage you, if you have problems with video, with the video signals, to turn off your camera, and that will help with the video too. We would like to take questions using the chat feature of GoToMeeting. You should see the chat box on the lower right side of your screen. If not, click on the chat button on the top right of your screen and it will open the chat feature. Type in your questions and click send. You can send your questions anytime during this hour, starting now. We hope to make a recording available. If that is helpful to you, you can request access to the recording by sending a message in the chat box and including your email with that, or you can email jonesmith@harrisisi.com. Mike, you have some opening words for us?
But just in case you don't, I'm Mike Harris with Harris Integrated Solutions. 5 months ago, if we were walking in a public building or a bank wearing a mask, we would have been swarmed by police and assumed to be up to no good. Today, there are mandatory mask ordinances in many cities across the state. For the last 5 months, you all have been working day to day with continual changes and development of the COVID-19 world pandemic. Over the next few weeks, major decisions are being made in preparation for reopening your buildings. With everyone having a wide range of concerns and questions, I'd like for you to keep one word in mind, and that is together. You are not alone. Our only goal today is to bring people together that are like-minded with the same goal of reopening our buildings safely and discussing some of the best practices some of our progressive energy management leaders are doing and planning. The Bible says, in the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. Hopefully, this webinar and identifying some possible resources will provide some answers. As more is known about the COVID-19 and additional solutions arise, I want you to know that we are committed to continue to research and find some of the answers that we don't have today. We've created a COVID-19 section on our website where we can provide up-to-date info, links, and resources. So let's get started. Joan's going to introduce our guest, and again, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Remembering to turn that microphone on and off. So this morning we have with us Bill Knight. He's the Director of Energy Management in Greenville County Schools. You know, they have over 100 facilities, over about 12 million square feet. The statistics, 71,000 students and 10,000 employees. So they have a lot to look at in this district. And we're happy to have you this morning, Bill.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you, Joan. We may have others joining us as we go through the hour, but for now, we're going to move forward. Again, let me welcome you and acknowledge that you energy managers and facilities managers have an awesome task in the next few weeks, regardless of what happens.
That's right.
Harris wants to help you in 3 different ways above and beyond what we normally offer. First, as Joan has indicated, we have brought together some of your fellow energy managers and HVAC experts to share what they see as the most pressing issues they are facing. Second, they will be joined by several of our staff to answer questions that might be of help to you. And third, as Mike indicated, we have gathered some resources that we'll be posting on our website that are from um, resources that are readily available, but we've put them together in a list, and maybe that'll save some of you from having to hunt for them. 2 more notes. To answer questions in an orderly manner, again, I'm asking that you submit those using the chat feature of GoToMeeting. You should see the chat box on the lower right side of your screen. If not, click on that balloon on the top right of your screen and it will open the chat feature. Type in your question and click send, and then we'll have it and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Finally, the information we are presenting today and the resources of our website are not intended to be used in place of professional advice from your mechanical engineer. Your systems were probably engineered by a professional and should not be altered without consulting your engineer. One thing that might make your visual experience a little better is up in the center of the screen above where the pictures of the participants are is a little up and down indicator that allows you to check whether you want to view everybody or who's talking or active cameras. And you may want to click now for the presentations that are coming, who's talking, and that way you'll still see some of the other pictures, but you'll see the person who is talking in a bigger picture, and that'll make it easier to read their lips if you have to do that. Finally, we're ready to hear from our guest. Bill, tell us 1 or 2 of the most pressing issues that you are or have faced and how you are addressing them.
Well, that's certainly a good question. It's probably something a lot of people are wondering about, but and I've thought about that since the question was posed. And for me and our staff and talking to all the maintenance guys and construction people, really the biggest thing is just simply not knowing what the start of school is going to look like exactly. Because in order to hit a target, you have to know what the target is. And for us, that is the most frustrating thing. It's not the technical issues. It's the logistics of having to literally wait till the last minute. I don't anticipate knowing for sure what the start of school is going to look like until the day before school starts. So, we have had to plan for multiple scenarios and be prepared for a multitude of things that could happen. And that is the most frustrating thing that we've had to deal with is just, exhaustive resources on trying to forecast, and try to scheme up things that could happen and how people would react and the regulatory issues that are constantly changing. And then you throw in on top of that all the local issues and super local issues. Even within a single school district, you could have different scenarios in different schools. So anyway, as short as I could get it, that's the most frustrating thing we're dealing with is to try to be prepared for literally anything.
we're all having to remember to turn our mics on and off, so that's the reason for the pauses. Joan, did you have a question you wanted to pose to Bill?
Well, I know that, yes, I know that the Accelerate Ed Task Force has placed the guidelines out for restarting schools, and I don't know if that's changing daily as some of the other stuff. Bill, how is that? Can you speak to how this drives your plans for opening?
Yeah, we provided some input to ASHRAE and Accelerate ED on all that, and it's, those guidelines are great. It's got all the issues that you need to be concerned about, but the problem is trying to do all that in 43 days or however many days it was for when we got it, when school started, is, it's just really, it's impossible. You have to figure out ways to do it remotely, through these control systems or something, but and most people's systems are designed to standards, at the time that they were built, and most, hopefully all buildings meet current building codes. But to go through there and try to individually assess every system, which really as an engineer you have to do, to try to like throw MERV 14 filters in a system that wasn't designed for anything more than 7, that's just not going to end well for you. And to even recommend that without extensive warnings and just things that you need to look out for without a formula for what you need to do, that's just going to be tough for a lot of people, particularly schools that are mostly designed and built with package systems. There aren't a whole lot of big applied 4-pipe systems out there in K-12. And those are only the ones that even have a chance of taking an upgrade like that. And then, at the same time, if you're going to do that, there's also a recommendation to increase ventilation air. Well, if you put, higher pressure drop filters in, you're going to decrease your ventilation air. So there's just a lot of stuff to consider. And every building's different. And you just need to be very careful and deliberate about what you want to do. And also, I think at the end of the day, we can do everything physically possible, but it's still going to come down to the people in that building and how they behave as to whether they're going to get sick or not. We can put all the engineering measures in place, but we cannot control what 2 human beings do in close proximity to one another. And an HVAC system can't do anything about that. So, and schools are not designed like laminar flow clean rooms and hospital operating rooms. There's a lot to consider about this. And there's a lot to try to communicate about this that frankly just lay people that aren't HVAC mechanical engineers are not equipped to understand. So we just need to be careful on what we do. We need to make sure what we do is effective and doesn't cause more damage. And we need to make sure that what we're doing is actually beneficial and to some degree cost effective, that it's not going to cause problems down the road, either in the instructional process or your finances. So,
Bill, I want to ask a question that's a follow-up to the last things you were saying. Does this crisis mean that energy management and energy savings are out the window until it's over, or are there still things you're able to do even while you're addressing the virus issues?
Well, there are things you can do. Engineering by definition is figuring out what your criteria is, doing exactly what you need to do to meet that criteria, a very small safety factor, and nothing else. So, you can cover yourself with operating hours or sequences that just really overshoot criteria and waste energy. But there's always an opportunity to waste energy. And by definition, waste is not good. And there's always an opportunity to save energy and do the, quote unquote, best thing by figuring out what you need to do to meet your criteria and then manage your system from that point forward. So there's always opportunities. And energy management, it's money, so is there a reason to try to manage money? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
I have a question. All right, so having talked with a number of different people the last few weeks, I realize there are extreme points of view, like you were just talking about. You could go to the wasteful end or the savings end, about the different points of view of how the building should be managed as it relates to scheduling HVAC systems. Some may elect to run nonstop 24/7, and that raises some red flags, and others may schedule as before the COVID-19 began, maybe an hour or so before. What is, from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about this, realizing the buildings do have different systems, different equipment and capabilities?
Yeah, there again, there could be some unintended consequences if you properly evaluate your buildings. Hopefully, you got a lot of local knowledge with your operators and your building and your area, and you know exactly what you can and can't do, because there can be, again, unintended consequences for doing things like running a building 24/7 that's unoccupied. So, and the ramifications from doing that, there's just a whole list of bad things that can happen. So here again, just like the accelerated ED recommendations and the ASHRAE recommendations, they say before you do any of this, you need to properly evaluate your system to determine what it can and can't do, and what unintended consequences you're going to have if you're running a system unoccupied 24/7 in a coastal climate or a humid environment, or with no students in it, or you subcooling it. There's just a lot of considerations to be made, and instead of creating a more healthy environment, you could be creating a dangerous environment. So there are better things you can do, and most people have DDC controls now and web-based systems that you can monitor online. Hopefully you got a few points that you can check and operate your systems a little more wisely. Monitor CO2, do some other things, and try to limit the waste and limit the overcooling, which are things that we really worry about. It's overcooling the space, especially this time of year. And you're trying to cool a space to a set point that's below ambient temperature. That's not going to be good for your building and the people inside of it. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the resources or time to do anything, I would opt, for being safer and try to deal with everything, later when you get the time. So there are other things you can do depending on your local situation, again, depending on security and opening doors and windows. Even doing that in today's world with security recommendations, you may or may not be able to do that. So there's just a lot to consider.
Bill, I'm going to call on Scott Jalbert from our R&D department. He had a question. He wanted to ask you about new technologies and about filtration.
Sure.
You cited exactly the problem that I was going to see with existing HVAC systems. You just can't swap into a filter that's going to be more restrictive and expect the same or even better performance with the outside air. Have you seen any guidance or maybe thought about using in-room filtration, some of the mobile units or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at it, but to try to get that implemented in 43 days, again, that's, and how effective is it going to be? I don't know. I haven't seen any studies for it. So, it would be another one of those localized cost benefit things that I would see. I'm just not quite sure, how effective that would be in a 1,000 square foot classroom. How many viruses is it actually removing? We've got a lot of beta test projects going on for new technology, and that's not one of them right now. So unfortunately, I can't really speak specifically on any personal experience with it, but I would just be concerned with trying to get that implemented district wide, in the time period that a lot of the districts would have. And then the question is, well, what if everybody did it? Well, that's just not going to happen because there are not enough units out there to be made. Could it help? Maybe. Can it be implemented throughout a whole district? Probably not. But if somebody had a unique situation and had an individual or two, I'm sure there's some localized conditions where that could be a benefit. Perhaps you could put it in a nurse's office in an area where you had a student that had an autoimmune disease or something. I would certainly look at something for that. We've got some units in stock, so to speak, in our warehouse where we're prepared. We have dealt with situations like that in the past. So there could be opportunities for it, but here again, it would be very difficult to implement district-wide in just a few weeks. And that's my opinion.
Bill, I'm going to go back to Joan in just a minute, but John Miner, who's retired from Automated Logic and is working with mechanical engineers in the upstate, had a question.
Yes, the question, in support of your efforts, Bill, in reopening, is there a message that you'd like to deliver? I mean, if you could get a message to administrators, teachers, and students that would help support your efforts, what would that be?
Well, we're just simply following guidelines that have been sent out by the state. And, if I would just want to send out a personal message, and I would hope that each district perhaps could go through their administration and all the principals, that if or when the students get in the buildings, that they simply explain to them how important it is for them personally to follow all the guidelines for social distancing, the wearing a mask, and the washing of hands. And if they could all do that, then it really makes all this other stuff very effective. Because if they do all that, that's really going to be the single most important thing that they can do to control the spread of the virus. So that's what I would ask.
Okay.
Bill, we have had some inquiries about some of the duct filtration systems. And I'd like to call on Kevin Kimberly, who works up in the upstate area, with a question about that.
Hey, Bill. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was just curious on what your thoughts were on the bipolar ionization systems that are being touted today. It's not new technology. It's technology that's been out there. I didn't know if you had an opportunity to even consider that. And as you pointed out before, it's kind of hard to implement something like that in a short span. And I am aware of some portable UV systems that hospitals use. They are costly, but I did pick up on what you just said earlier about using that kind of systems for certain areas for those students that may be, more at risk, if you will. So that's I think that's a great point that you made earlier. But I'm just curious what your opinion is on the ionization systems.
Yeah, great. It's, I'm going to be careful here not to tout any specific technology or manufacturer and kind of, follow the logic and the guidance from ASHRAE on this is that, the electronic cleaning systems can be very effective, and that's my opinion, okay? And if you read the ASHRAE documentation, they are very super ultra conservative on air cleaning, and of course they tend to lean toward technologies that have decades of proven scientific tested performance data. Okay, so that's HEPA filters. All right, so that's been around for 50 years in hospitals. And then the next thing they're going to go to is UV, because that's been around for decades in hospitals. It's got scientific, third-party, proven data that they can go to on reference standards. The problem that we have seen with UV is not that it doesn't work, is that it's more infrastructure involved. So it has to be installed, which is costly, and it has to be absolutely positively maintained, or it just simply doesn't work. In other words, you can't install it and abandon it in place. So there's an annual recurring maintenance cost with it that is very high. So that's always a consideration in your life cycle cost, in your cost benefit analysis. As far as the electronic cleaners, we find that some of them are relatively speaking, they're very cheap and easy to install, and they can be very effective. There is some recent data that is coming out that per ASHRAE standards and per ASHRAE guidelines and per their written and verbal descriptions is third-party scientific data that proves these systems can be effective in killing the virus. So in certain situations where you've got good airflow, but here again, that's where you kind of come into the problem is what is good airflow? And, do you have laminar airflow anywhere in a school? Well, the answer is no. So you get into your airflow effectiveness of your ventilation systems. By ASHRAE standard 62 definition, most systems, the way they're designed, at best, they're 80% effective because you got sealing, supply, and return. You've got some recirculation. You got some short circuiting. For these electronic air cleaners to work, you have to get those ions into the breathing zone within 60 seconds. They have a very short life, but they are very effective if they're properly applied in an air system with very effective air mixing and somewhat laminar flow. We've beta tested many different technologies. We find it to be effective. We haven't done any third-party testing like has been done recently. We're relying on the manufacturers and ASHRAE to develop that data. But we have used electronic air cleaning. We've used the ionization devices. We don't use anything. One thing you need to be careful of is ozone. Okay, so you need to be careful you're not using something like an ozone generator. So you need that UL certification for no ozone. But we have used electronic air cleaning, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we do have a lot of it installed already. You know, here again, that's infrastructure, and it's something that would take a very long time to implement. And we've been using it for years for a lot of different reasons. We've been using it to lower outside airflow rates at some times. We've been using it to clean air and eliminate odors in locker rooms. We've been using it in various ways for various reasons and have had pretty good success with it. So some people have not, and some people don't have a good feel for it. But I think a lot of that's changing here just in the last year or two, because we're starting to see some data that people can relate to and can bank on that proves that technology can work. So that's about my dissertation on electronic air cleaning.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
We're gonna go to Joan for one last question for you before Tony Holcomb joins us. But I want to thank you for giving us the half hour that you indicated, and we've used every minute of it, I think. And so Joan's going to ask one more question, and I again would say thank you.
Bill, do you know of any special sanitizing procedures that, and I know this is a different department, that your district is utilizing?
Oh, absolutely. That was really the very first thing we did when schools got closed, is our building services and custodial staff went out there to evaluate, you know, the things that are available, and certainly, you know, the hospitals and all those technologies is already out there. So it was easy for us to find, you know, a system that would work. So we went out and evaluated, and you know, we found some products that are out there, and it's basically hospital grade chemical sanitations that you ionize and you spray locally, and it attaches itself to those hard surfaces, and you know, you get your absolute disinfection that way. And these are all certified products, again, they're hospital grade, and it's an enhanced technology with the way it's applied, so it goes a long way. It's charged so it sticks to the surface, so you get your contact time, and then they can go behind and do their general cleaning for dirt and dust or whatever. But as far as the viruses and the bacteria, those chemical sanitizers have worked well for us, and that was the first thing we did to get the buildings cleaned up and secured. So that's what we've done.
Thank you, Bill. Joan, you want to introduce Tony?
Okay, Tony Holcomb has joined us from Georgetown County Schools, and he has a lot of knowledge and background with energy and facility maintenance, and I know that they've been addressing this same question that we just asked Bill. Tony, talk to us a little bit about your sanitizing products and methods of use.
Hey, Tony, let me inject one thing while you're getting your microphone all squared away. Just for folks that have joined us since we started, we're asking you to submit questions using the chat box in the lower right side of your screen. And if you don't see the chat box there, then look up in the upper right side, and there's a little balloon that you can click, and it will open up the chat box. Just type in your question and hit send there. Tony, it's always great to hear from somebody in Georgetown. I hear the ocean in the background. So go at it.
Oh, good morning. Sorry, I'm arriving a little late. Something happened last night. I've got to go get tested this morning. Isn't that funny?
Oh goodness.
Yeah, this thing's been very interesting. I started having cold chills and headaches last night. It wasn't really bad, but this morning I just got a little respiratory thing going on, and I got to go get tested. My wife is setting it up with a doctor right now. But here's what we've been doing. We've been like Bill was talking about. We're using bipolar ionization, going through this building program, which is we use bipolar ionization on our 5-ton and below systems. Now, the larger fresh air systems, we're using cold plasma, which is a very similar process, I believe. And we're presenting. Matter of fact, the board meeting is taking place now, where they're doing the social distancing in the classroom. We're doing the same thing. I think we've got pictures from how Greenville County's doing it, and I think that's going to be our proposal now. But we're using Clorox 360 sanitation machines. We started using those last year when we had a flu outbreak where 20% of the school was out, and we used them, and in 2 days everybody was back in and everything was fine. They've been proven successful. But yeah, we're probably going to do like everybody else. Our suggestion will probably be a hybrid type school startup, and not e-learning so much, but we'll probably do virtual labs and then on-campus teaching.
Tony, are you using filtration systems in the classrooms or anything like that in addition to stuff you already have there? What have you added?
What we've done as far as filtration, we're just using a MERV 8, well, a standard MERV 8 filter. And the reason why is because we're concerned about, and this comes from our mechanical engineer, we're concerned about the effect on the indoor fan motors. You know, it takes a lot more CFMs to move air across MERV 13 or 14, and MERV 14 is what ASHRAE recommended, than it does a MERV 8. So we're not really going to do anything as far as with filtration.
John, you have a question?
How about the amount of time you're running your facilities, you're scheduling on and off? Are you adding additional run time?
Well, we've got a micro block program set up called a refresh rate. And the refresh rate exchanges the air in the room, just runs, it senses when the indoor fan motor doesn't run every 15 minutes or so, and it automatically runs doing a air exchange. So we're looking at probably every 8 minutes. I think that was our calculation. Every 8 minutes, with our dampers fully open, exchanging the fresh air, bringing in fresh air into the classroom. I think they call it air changes per hour, or ACH. We're looking, the way we figured it out with 16 people, we're going to have it run about 8 minutes. So it'll be more. It'll cost a little bit more in the long run, but it'd be a lot better.
You mentioned cost, Tony. One of the things we asked Bill about was as far as energy savings for most of our energy manager guys in the state. That energy savings is a big part of their job. When the virus broke out and you had to start doing all kind of crazy things, did energy savings just go out the window, or are you still able to focus on that area at all?
Well, this is, and I was talking with someone with the state energy department yesterday about this. Well, we were emailing, and I asked them about this. What effects this COVID-19 is doing on school energies? Because I mean, we really couldn't judge, whether we're doing any energy saving projects or anything else because of the reduced student population. Your energy use goes way down. Your cost per square foot and your BTUs per square foot drop drastically. But when they start coming in with these with these air changes per hour increased, we're looking at probably, I'm not sure. I think we were going to do an estimate based on a 3-ton unit, how much more it was going to cost to run them, and just sort of figure our budget like that. Because once you start changing, especially down here at Low Country, South Carolina, once you start changing that air, you got to condition it before you bring it back in the classroom because of the humidity factor and the temperature factor.
Tony, John Miner had a question for you.
Tony, we heard about trying to cure COVID-19 or prevent it from infecting people. Do you think there's going to be a requirement or demand for following up these efforts with duct cleaning or some kind of duct sanitation efforts to help prevent the spread?
I got a feeling it's going to be down the road, depending on how bad this pandemic gets. You know, we've talked about doing some duct cleaning, but in some of our schools we have our older schools we have duct board, and which was a no for us. And if you start cleaning duct board, you're going to make a situation worse. But
yeah.
I know we have made it mandatory for especially your grills and your filters to be changed and the grills to be cleaned and sanitized. Okay. Another reason we were talking about using, and I think this was Mike and I were talking about this. If you start using the more the MERV 13 or 14 filter, now do we have to treat this like a biohazard or what? Because it's caught more particles. Now what we've also done is we've used a dual filtering system. We filter everything we can before the ductwork so we can reduce the need for cleaning.
Tony, Jason Carroll from our North Carolina Asheville office has a question for you.
Good morning, Tony. We just had a general question for you regarding kind of the research side of things. I did hear you mention ASHRAE and kind of using ASHRAE as a source of information, moving forward. Have you found any other resources that have been very beneficial to you to help you and your district kind of, plan out the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months, and 6 months from now?
Are you talking about using the some of the things in the ASHRAE guidelines? Are we using anything out of that? Is that what?
Yeah, either ASHRAE or if you've found other sources of information that have helped you to make decisions moving forward.
One of the things our buildings have been reduced occupancy since March. I know one of the things ASHRAE, besides the sanitation and keeping the room humidity between 40 and 60%, one of the other things we're doing is we're also running the water. The hot water, we brought our hot water. That's another thing that ASHRAE talked about, was bringing your hot water up to 140 degrees to keep from Legionnaire disease from developing in some of your pipes. Because like I say, we've been sort of in a very reduced occupancy since March. And what we're having the custodial and building staff do is run water fixtures for 15 to 40 seconds, 15 to 40 seconds, just so we could flush the water out of the building. Because like I say, nobody's there using it. And one of ASHRAE's concern was the development of a Legionnaire in the water and bacterial infections. Another thing we're looking at that we got from ASHRAE mainly was the air changes per hour. That was some. Now their formula they used, I couldn't figure that. It was like some Egyptian hieroglyphics. So we had to bring in an engineer and discuss with them about, we're talking about, and like I said, we're using Greenville County School District setup of we'll probably have about 16 kids per class, plus the teacher. But the ASHRAE, the air exchanges, the water for the building, and are two of the things that we'll probably be using out of the ASHRAE guidelines.
Tony Scott had a question for you.
For the cleaning staff, are you increasing their frequency? Are they doing multiple times a day now or anything like that?
Well, what we did was back in March is we sanitized each and every classroom and put a seal on the door. That way, if someone walked in, someone had to go in the room, we'd know the seal was broken, and they're recording that. And once the seal's broken, they go back in. They're supposed to go back in, re-sanitize, and reseal the room. And that's the way we. As far as with our Clorox 360 units, they did an entire high school in less than half a day, because the Clorox 360 units are so. I mean, you just walk in, you spray everything down. It atomizes the charge in the mist. The mist sticks. It dries in 15 minutes. It's probably the best way. And the thing about cleaning with rags and bleach is you've got to dispose of your rags. So actually, with the machines are more costly, but the speed in which we're able to sanitize a building has increased significantly.
Kevin Kimberly had a question.
Hey, Tony. I thought of two questions while I was sitting here waiting for my turn. So to add to what you just said about doing the Clorox 360 cleaning and whatnot, has your staff's documentation been increased to make record of all these things that you guys are doing? Do you have to do that?
We haven't. We've discussed that, and the only documentation we were using was the seal on the door. But you know what? That is a great idea. Just a little Excel sheet with a cleaning schedule and a check box would be a great. That way, because when the students come back, we feel, the rooms have to be sanitized every day. Because God forbid anybody catch this. It's affected different people different ways, and I just feel like that's a great idea right there, using documentation. This way, you probably find out some information, as far as a student who possibly brought it in or something, and that way you could be proactive in responding to a possible small outbreak in a classroom or something.
And I think.
Yeah, it just seems like.
Go ahead, Kevin.
It just seems like you would have made every single effort to do whatever you've done on your part, and you've had record of it. And as a parent, I could see where that would be kind of an important tool for you guys. I guess my second question is, you made mention of cold plasma for 5 ton and above. How long have you been using that, and what's your experience with the cold plasma system?
We've not had much experience with it. I'm not familiar with it. I had to do a little research on the bipolar ionization, and I understand a little bit how that works. But the cold plasma, we've not really delved into it. Now, I tell you what, we've took one of the nastiest schools that we had as far as indoor air quality 2 years ago. Had mold growing in the room. I mean, it was just a nasty place. We put, number one, we put a control system in. We put new HVAC units in, and we did the bipolar ionization. It cleaned the school up, and I mean, we have very little problem. We dehumidify 24 hours a day, keep it below 60% relative humidity, and I'm pretty sure that bipolar ionization has helped increase the quality. The cold plasma, I've talked to some engineers about it, and they like it. Some of them like it better than the bipolar ionization, but I've not had that much experience with it.
And I'm going to call on Joan for our last question of the morning as we get close to the end of the hour.
Oh, well, I've got a ton more questions, but I'll how are y'all addressing feeding your children? Are they being fed in the classrooms? or in the cafeterias or large spaces? What kind of information do you have on that?
Well, now, as far as feeding, my recommendation is no feeding in the classroom, none whatsoever. And the reason why is because it just leaves so much of a mess. A lot of our mold issues come now not from humidity, but from food in the classroom. You know, and that's one thing we're going to do everything we can to discourage.
I know I had seen, had talked with different ones, and I'd heard on the news and different places about some school districts were keeping the kids in place and moving the teachers around and bringing the food to them. And then I've heard some say, no, we want them in a place where we have big air exchange and we can change air quickly. And, that made sense to them. So I was just wondering what you guys were doing.
Well, like I say, our recommendation is going to be just use the cafeterias and multi-purpose rooms. We can set up and we can social distance in there, and that way that would be just one area, just two areas that have to be cleaned from food particles. Because little kids, especially our elementary school students, have a tendency to leave crumbs behind them, like Hansel and Gretel.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you to all of our guests this morning, and for putting this together on such short notice. Tony, hope you get good news from your testing. Hope you can get it quick, and I hope you feel better above everything else. But I wanted to say thank you, and then I also want to call attention to our website, where there are additional resources available to everyone there. And I think I can bring up a slide that just shows a few of them. Lost it all of a sudden. Here we go. That's not it. Anyway, on our website, which is harrisintegration.com, you will find ASHRAE and CDC resources, some other ideas and suggestions that we have picked up that you can use to supplement the information you've heard this morning from Bill and from Tony as we have gone through the questions. If you have additional questions, you can submit them on the chat feature. It'll be open for about 5 more minutes, and we'll be glad to see if we can answer those if we haven't covered them already. We're also hoping to make a recording available, and if you'll leave your name and email address, we'll let you know about how to get access to that recording when it is done. Remember to go to harrisintegration.com to be able to see the additional resources. Mike, do you have some closing comments?
I actually did, but since you covered most of them, I think we're okay. You did a very thorough job. Thank you, Mark. But thanks everybody for joining us. We really hope this was helpful, informative. Again, I just want to reiterate that we are here to help you in any way we possibly can. I think one of the best things is for us to communicate and for us to pass on best practices to one another and things that you've found that have worked and have been helpful. And again, we just pray that everything will go well with your reopening, whatever your scenario actually winds up being. And we will always be here if you need us. So thanks for joining us, and you guys be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.